Hey everybody, and welcome to BingeBot. We recap all the latest and greatest TV shows to help keep you in the loop. Today we're checking out Tulsa King Season 2. This crime drama stars Sylvester Stallone as Dwight Manfredi, a capo in the Mafia who moves from New York City to Tulsa, Oklahoma to expand the family's operation. However, Dwight's actions in Season 1 see him back into a jail cell, left to stew on those who betrayed him and his next steps forward. As always, if you guys like our recaps, drop us a like and subscribe, or you can support us further via YouTube memberships, Patreon, or Buy Me a Coffee. But for now, let's jump right into our recap of Tulsa King Season 2, starting with Episode 1, Back in the Saddle. After being betrayed by his ex-lover, ATF agent Stacy Beale, Tulsa crime boss Dwight Manfredi is thrown into jail after trying to give Stacy $1 million, leading to his arrest on charges of attempted bribery of a federal agent. While spending the night behind bars, Dwight meets Harlan, a man with a wind farm who'd scammed the federal government out of $12.5 million in clean energy subsidies. And impressed by the amount of money that Harlan has made, Dwight keeps this in mind. The next morning, Dwight's taken to the courthouse where he, with the help of his daughter Tina, manages to convince the judge to let him out on bail for $3 million. So, meeting with his crew at their bar and casino establishment, the Bread to Buck, Dwight floats the wind farm idea and finds the others are receptive to it. After heading over to the Fenario Horse Ranch to check on his prize horse, Dwight's invited to a charity fundraising dinner by Margaret Devereaux, the owner of the ranch and Dwight's current romantic interest. Later that night, when Stacy returns home from the office, she finds Dwight sitting in her living room, and terrified, she asks if he's there to kill her. Assuring her that he has no such intentions, Dwight explains that he'd felt incredibly lonely during the 25 years that he spent in prison, all because he chose not to rat out the Inverneses, his former mob family in New York. Despite knowing that he and Stacy would never work out because of the different lives that they lead, Dwight thanks her for making him feel whole again and expresses that he'll always have tremendous respect for her. Struck speechless, Stacy sits frozen as Dwight wishes her goodbye and leaves. Sometime after, Dwight heads to the weed store of his business partner Bodhi and finds the place massively upgraded and rebranded with the new name, the Even Higher Plane. Impressed, Dwight praises Bodhi and introduces his wind farm idea. Realizing that the cheap wind energy would be perfect for powering a hydroponic weed farm of their own and massively expanding their business, Bodhi happily agrees. With his men in tow, Dwight goes to Margaret's fundraiser where she introduces him to Cal Thresher, a wealthy oil tycoon who has rapidly grown to become the largest medical marijuana distributor in Oklahoma. Though initially intending to be friendly, Dwight quickly learns that Thresher's not a fan, viewing him as a competition in the weed business, and this leads the two to exchange some threatening words until Dwight decides to head out early.
You're here to take advantage, right? Isn't that what you people do?
You people?
Tough guy.
Hoping to make trouble for Dwight, Thresher calls Bill Bevilacqua, head of Kansas City's Bevilacqua Mafia family, and tells him of Dwight's business success in Tulsa, a city that the Bevilacquas consider part of their territory. Episode 2, Kansas City Blues. Furious at what he views as trespassing on his territory, Bill makes a call to Chicky, the boss of the Inverness crime family in New York. Sensing an opportunity to strike at Dwight, whom he holds a grudge against for not supporting his claim as the new leader of the Invernesses, Chicky tells Bill to give him a few days to come up with a proposition. At the courthouse, Dwight's surprised when none other than the district attorney Dylan McGrath shows up to act as the criminal prosecutor in his case, which puts Dwight at a huge disadvantage, especially as he's decided to represent himself. Unbeknownst to Dwight, this is also Thresher's doing, as he's used his connections to have McGrath take up the case. Finishing up the preliminary court work, Dwight decides to put his plans for the wind farm in motion and visits Harlan in prison, striking a deal to acquire all of the wind turbines for $7.5 million. After having a talk with his sister Joanne, who tells him that Tina would fall apart if he went to prison yet again, Dwight decides to meet with McGrath in hopes of striking up some sort of deal. Spotting a note left on McGrath's desk to call Thresher, Dwight realizes who's behind this predicament and leaves the district attorney's office. While having a drink at the Bread to Buck, Goody, Dwight's underboss and former high-ranking member of the Inverness family, receives a call from Chicky. Supposedly looking out for Goody, Chicky tells him that the only way he can survive is by betraying Dwight and working with both the Invernesses and the Bevilacquas instead. To sweeten the deal, Chicky offers to let Goody run Tulsa on the two families' behalf, and intrigued, Goody asks for some time to consider the offer. Episode 3, Oklahoma vs. Manfredi. While at his job on the Fenario Ranch, Armand Truzzi, who works for Dwight, receives a call from Thresher. Having learned that Armand's going through a rough divorce, Thresher calls him to his office and offers him $30,000 in cash in return for answering any questions that Thresher has about Dwight's activities. With the Bevilacquas intent on talking with Dwight, Goody receives a call from Chicky to set up a meeting between the two parties. Arriving in Tulsa, Bill sits down with Dwight at the Bread to Buck, where the two have a chat regarding the Bevilacquas' claim over Tulsa. Strongly dismissing this claim, Dwight points out that there was no mob influence in Tulsa before he arrived, and for that reason, Dwight tells Bill that everything he built in Tulsa belongs to only him, and he will not entertain any claim over it, whether it be by the Bevilacquas or the Inverneses. Angry at Dwight's blatant rejection, Bill walks away stating that he will send a man over with a different proposition. On the day of his trial, under the watchful eyes of all of his friends and family, Dwight calls Stacy to the stand and begins building a compelling defense in front of the court. Establishing that she was the one who initiated their relationship, Dwight informs the jury that they were quite intimate and that Stacy saved his life on multiple occasions, including taking a bullet for him. With how strong their connection was, Dwight explains that it was only natural that he felt like he needed to do something nice for Stacy, and so as a gift, he transferred $1 million into her bank account. And since he didn't ask for anything in return, this could not be considered a bribe, rendering the entire case against him invalid. Thankfully, Dwight's passionate plea works, and the jury declares him not guilty.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Dwight Manfredi, not guilty.
Meeting with Stacy afterwards, Dwight learns that she's being transferred to Alaska, and the two permanently part ways. While preparing a party to celebrate Dwight's freedom, Goody receives a call from Chicky, who tells him that Bill's sending his right-hand man, Carl Caputo, to kill Dwight. That night at the celebration, Goody tells Dwight that Carl's waiting outside and wishes to speak with him. And heading out, the two meet with Carl, who pulls out a knife, when suddenly Bigfoot, a new gigantic member of Dwight's crew, chokes Carl from behind as Goody stabs him to death, revealing that Goody had been playing Chicky this whole entire time. Going back inside, Dwight dances with Margaret, and the two end up spending the night together. The next morning, as Bill leaves his driveway, he's absolutely livid when he finds Carl's body wrapped in a trash bag.
Back in time.
Episode 4, Heroes and Villains. Back at his home, Dwight finds Joanne waiting, having noticed that something was off about her brother, and forced to explain the situation, Dwight's reprimanded by Joanne for putting the family in severe danger by refusing to compromise with Bill. Meanwhile, at his massive marijuana farm, Thresher learns that his business partner Jackie Ming, a boss in the Chinese Triad gang, is using some of the land to grow poppy plants, which are then processed and made into heroin. Angry that his land is being used to manufacture an illegal substance, Thresher admonishes Jackie and tells him to burn all of the poppy. And unhappy that Thresher's killing such a valuable cash cow, Jackie disagrees with this demand and makes it clear he's going to continue growing the poppy whether Thresher likes it or not. Now that he owns the wind turbines, Dwight takes a trip with his team to check out the wind farm for himself. And simultaneously meeting up with Armand at the Fenario Ranch, Thresher offers him some extra cash and learns of Dwight's plans regarding the wind farm. When they arrive, Dwight meets with the Native American tribal chief Med Hat, whose land the farm stands on. Revealing that he received a decent offer from Thresher just moments ago, Med Hat tells Dwight that if he wants the land, he needs to offer 20% of the wind farm's energy and 20% of the weed farm's profits to the tribe. Annoyed by Thresher's constant interference, Dwight agrees to Med Hat's terms, realizing it's his best option. Back in New York, Chicky's displeased with Goody's betrayal and comes under pressure from Bill to do something about Dwight. Drunk in a meeting with his lieutenants, Chicky offhandedly reveals that his father and former leader of the family, Pete Invernizzi, did not die of a heart attack as he'd previously claimed, but was instead murdered by Chicky himself.
Like what baby chick is standing up, legs kicking like crazy. You mean? Nothing.
Upon hearing this, Vince, Chicky's number 2, is understandably shocked. Later that day, while Chicky's passed out on a sofa, Vince picks up his boss's ringing phone and talks to Bill. Explaining that getting to Dwight again would be difficult since he's on high alert, Vince calls for a meeting of all three parties together, to which Bill agrees. Episode 5, Tilting at Windmills. The day after, Vince floats the idea of the meeting by Chicky, who ultimately agrees and tells Vince to set up the whole thing in Atlanta, a neutral location. Giving Goody a call, Vince asks to have the invitation delivered to Dwight. While at the Fenario Ranch to ask Margaret out on a date, Dwight asks her about Thresher and learns that the oil baron likes to partner with various criminals to do his dirty work, with his latest allies being the Chinese Triads. As the two talk, Thresher himself shows up at the ranch to look at one of his horses. And confronting him, Dwight tells the tycoon to stop interfering, but Thresher brushes him off with an arrogant attitude. Looking to supervise the work at the wind farm, Bodhi and his weed supplier Jimmy head over there. In his car with his driver Tyson, Dwight receives Vince's message about the meeting through Goody and agrees to think it over. Returning to his marijuana farm, Thresher commandeers some of Jackie's men and sends them over to the wind farm to cause trouble. 2 trucks filled with Triad thugs reach the wind farm, beat up Bodhi, and start wrecking the valuable equipment. And just minutes away from the plant, Dwight receives a distress call from Jimmy and tells Tyson to hit the gas. Upon arrival, Dwight and his men proceed to decimate the triads, with each member of the Manfredi crew doing their fair share of damage. Letting the rest run, Dwight picks up one of the triads and forces him to confess that they were sent over by Thresher.
You tell him he sent you, or he's gonna pull your face off.
Thresher.
Episode 6, Navigator. While visiting the even higher plane to pick up some gummies, Armand notices Bodhi's injured face and learns of the showdown at the wind farm. And since he was the one who told Thresher about the wind farm, Armand starts to feel guilty. So distressed, he heads to Thresher's office hoping to end their arrangement. Unhappy at Armand losing his nerve, Thresher threatens to torture him if he does not comply.
If you ever tell me what you will or won't do again, I'll have your tongue ripped out of your throat and sent to your children.
Upon seeing his men heavily injured, Jackie confronts Thresher over his obsession with Dwight and asks him to stay focused on their own business, a message that Thresher nonchalantly ignores. And realizing that his advice has fallen on deaf ears, Jackie tries a different approach, telling Thresher that if he's so bothered by Dwight, then he should stop taking half measures and end Dwight permanently. However, Thresher appears hesitant at the thought of committing murder. While Dwight heads to Atlanta for the meeting, Tyson takes this opportunity to use his boss's Lincoln Navigator to drive his father, Mark, around for his plumbing job, as Mark's van broke down. And as they move around town, though, Tyson keeps repeatedly seeing a white Prius nearby. At the airport, Chicky and Vince make their way through security. Though Vince passes through, Chicky's buzzed by the metal detector and realizes that he accidentally brought his ankle gun. Despite his attempts to explain, the TSA detain him, leaving Vince to go to Atlanta alone. Upon arrival, Vince meets up with Dwight and Bill at a restaurant, and the three sides begin their meeting. Keeping his family's safety in mind, Dwight agrees to negotiate a deal with Bill to end their hostilities and offers him a 15% share in his business. And though feeling like he's owed more, Bill reluctantly accepts the offer. Turning over to Vince, Dwight tells him that he feels zero obligation to the Inverneses after spending 25 years in jail for them and receiving nothing in return. So Dwight and Bill then head out, leaving a bewildered Vince to return to New York empty-handed. Upon his return, Vince and Chicky have an angry confrontation about their respective failures, and the two nearly come to blows, with their relationship clearly fracturing. While relaying the terms of the new deal with Mitch, his co-owner of the Bread to Buck, Dwight receives a call from Tyson, who asks to buy the Navigator as a gift for his dad. And after receiving Dwight's approval, Tyson shares the good news with his father, who's deeply touched by the gesture. The next morning, Tyson walks his exhilarated dad over to the Navigator when he suddenly spots the white Prius appearing again and then speeding away. And sensing something is off, he yells at his dad to stop, but the warning comes far too late. As Mark pulls open the car door, the Navigator erupts in a violent explosion, leaving Tyson screaming in despair for his unresponsive father. Episode 7, Life Support. Urgently transferred to the hospital, Mark manages to survive, but Tyson is still furious. Desperate for vengeance, he urges Dwight to help him get back at the Bevilacquas, who he assumes are responsible. Dwight isn't entirely certain that the Bevilacquas are responsible, though, and unwilling to act impulsively, he instructs Tyson to stay put while he investigates the owners of the suspicious white Prius, a decision that leaves Tyson frustrated. Meanwhile, unsatisfied with Chicky's leadership, Vince has a sit-down with high-ranking members of the other New York Mafia families. Laying out Chicky's failures to end the feud with Dwight and his murder of his own father, Vince convinces them to support his takeover of the Invernese family. Suspicious that Thresher may have had a hand in the Navigator bombing, Dwight goes up to his weed farm and confronts the wealthy businessman. And though Thresher claims ignorance, Dwight threatens to burn his entire weed empire down if he finds any hint that Thresher was involved.
You better pray that you or these kids you have working for you were involved. Because I'm gonna burn your world to the ground.
After Dwight leaves, Thresher, with suspicions of his own, questions Jackie and asks if he was involved. And though initially feigning ignorance, the Triad boss eventually confesses that he was the one responsible for the Navigator explosion. Panicked, Thresher asks what he's supposed to do when Dwight finds out, but Jackie insists that he will have the white Prius demolished before Dwight can trace it back to them. Moreover, Jackie coldly kills the gang member who drove the Prius in front of Thresher, and then calmly declares that they have nothing to worry about. Left stunned by this unprovoked violence, Thresher starts to realize that he may have bitten off more than he could chew by getting involved with Jackie and Dwight. Tired of waiting, Tyson makes his way over to Kansas City, and he locates Bill's manor. Worried about his loyal driver, Dwight gives Tyson a call, knowing very well what he's about to do. As Dwight urges Tyson to return to Tulsa, one of Bill's men spots Tyson and starts shooting. And returning fire, a panicked Tyson manages to injure the man, causing a huge racket. But now that his location is exposed, Tyson retreats and then returns to Tulsa. Episode 8, Under New Management. Upon Tyson's return, Dwight and a few others sit him down at the bread to buck and admonish him for being so reckless and putting them all in jeopardy. And despite the danger that he's placed them in, they still pledge to stand by him, which touches Tyson, and he promises not to act rashly again. Correctly assuming that Dwight or someone in his crew was responsible for the attack on him, Bill decides to hit back hard at Tulsa and gathers his men for war. Afraid for his daughter and grandchildren's safety, Dwight sends them away from Tulsa, and though Tina agrees to leave, she tells Dwight that someday his actions will tear their family apart permanently.
We'll leave, but I want you to know that if this family's torn apart again, it's not going to be able to get fixed. You know that, right?
And feeling apologetic and remorseful, Dwight can't help but tear up. Meeting at the weed farm, Jackie informs Thresher that he's decided to cut him out of their partnership, and confused, Thresher looks around and finds himself surrounded by several armed triads. Forcing Thresher to his knees, Jackie has him give up his share of the farm for an unbelievably generous price, 1,000 whole dollars. Though warning Jackie that he won't get away with this, Thresher's made to sign his property over at gunpoint. In another upheaval, Vince informs Chicky that he's talked to multiple people within the family and outside of it, and they've all agreed that Vince should lead the Invernizzi family. Forced to accept the decision, Chicky makes his displeasure known by spitting on the ground before walking away. Following Dwight's orders, Bodhi shuts down the even higher plane. After the store goes dark, Bodhi and Jimmy start walking away when a few of Bill's men execute a drive-by shooting, and though Bodhi luckily survives, Jimmy's tragically killed. Furious and desperate, Thresher goes to Kansas City and meets with Bill. And wanting his help in dealing with Jackie, Thresher reveals Jackie's role in the Navigator bombing. Angered by this, Bill yells at Thresher for getting the Bevilacquas involved in an unnecessary war with Dwight. Meanwhile, fearful of Dwight discovering that he'd been Thresher's informant, Armand decides to flee town. Desperately needing cash, he makes the unwise move of going to the Bread to Buck storage vault, and finding Goody there, he robs the place at gunpoint before running away. Episode 9. Triad. To honor their fallen comrade, the Manfredi family attend Jimmy's funeral, and at the service, they're introduced to members of Jimmy's Native American tribal family who vow to fight alongside them to avenge Jimmy's death. Also attending the funeral is Med Hat, who hands Dwight a tomahawk on behalf of Jimmy's sick mother. In a meeting with Bill, Thresher suddenly has an idea and announces that he might have a way to call a truce with Dwight. Arriving at the Fenario Ranch, Thresher informs Margaret that Jackie's looking to take over his business empire, which would include his investment in Fenario, putting Margaret herself in danger. Also revealing Jackie to be the mastermind behind the Navigator bombing, Thresher asks for Margaret's help in setting up a meeting between him, Bill, and Dwight. After hearing Thresher's story from Margaret, Dwight agrees to sit down with Bill and Thresher, and though they bicker over who's most at fault, Dwight eventually agrees to consider teaming up with them against Jackie. Meanwhile, as he heads out of town, an anxious and agitated Armand suddenly makes a sharp U-turn and starts going back. Seemingly desperate for help, Armand shows up at Jackie's weed farm, and he tells the Triad that he'll never know a moment of peace until Dwight is dead. To gain Jackie's assistance in killing Dwight, Armand reveals that Thresher's been letting everyone know that Jackie was behind the Navigator bombing, which means that Jackie's now in Dwight's crosshairs. Understanding that he needs to act first, the Triad boss agrees to target Dwight at the Fenario Ranch, where he occasionally spends the night with Margaret. Intimately familiar with the place, Armand leads Jackie and his men into the ranch under the cover of night. Suddenly, Armand starts feeling short of breath, and he asks to take a second. While Jackie and his men focus on Armand, the Manfredis, joined by the Bevilacquas and Jimmy's Native American kin, descend upon the exposed and confused Triads, unleashing a barrage of bullets and cutting down anyone in their path. With Jackie's crew eliminated, Dwight orders Mitch and Bigfoot to drag the now broken Triad leader into one of the stables. Placing Jimmy's tomahawk into Tyson's hands, Dwight tells him it's time to settle the score with the man who nearly killed his father. And though he's never killed anyone before, Tyson's desire for vengeance is more than enough for him to deliver a killing blow, burying the tomahawk in Jackie's skull. With Jackie out of the picture, a disheveled Armand enters the stable, leading Dwight to explain to the others that Armand came to his home earlier, ashamed of his actions. In an act of penance, Armand returned the money he'd stolen and agreed to lure Jackie into the trap to make up for his mistakes that Dwight has now forgiven.
Armand returned the 500 grand and helped set this whole thing up. So Armand, we're square.
Episode 10. Reconstruction. The next morning, Dwight takes a stroll with Thresher through the weed farm he's now reclaimed as his own. Thankful for his help with Jackie, Thresher offers to enter into a partnership with Dwight on the farm, but exacting an appropriate price for all of Thresher's interference, Dwight tells him that he won't enter a partnership and instead will be taking over the entire operation. He then tells Thresher to be thankful he's willing to let him live at all, and strongly advises him to stay clear of the underworld and stick to using his wealth in running legitimate businesses. Acknowledging that Dwight has a point, Thresher decides to walk away, leaving the weed farm to the Manfredis. At the Bread to Buck, Bill and Dwight have a meeting where Bill tries to renegotiate their deal, insisting that his assistance in bringing down Jackie entitles him to a bigger stake. Though Bill asks for a 50-50 split, Dwight counters with only 25%, an offer far below Bill's expectations, and frustrated and insulted, Bill storms out of the discussion. Returning home, Bill is surprised to find Chicky waiting for him. Desperate to reclaim leadership of the Inverneses, Chicky tries to plant ideas in Bill's head that eventually Dwight's greed for power will lead him into conflict with the Bevilacquas. And advising Bill to nip the problem in the bud, Chicky asks his help in killing Dwight once and for all. Sometime later, Bill and Chicky arrive at the Bread to Buck, where they find Dwight waiting behind the bar. The two approach Dwight, and Chicky tries to spin a story about how they can expand Dwight's Tulsa operation into a nationwide franchise, but in a shocking turn, Bill suddenly pulls out a gun and he shoots Chicky in the head. Having already informed Dwight of Chicky's real intention, Bill uses this as a display of allegiance and tells Dwight that he's now earned that 50-50 split.
50%.
You earned it.
In agreement with Bill, Dwight accepts becoming an equal partner with the Bevilacquas. Celebrating their success, Dwight gathers the Manfredi family for a party where he makes a speech on how they no longer need to look over their shoulders and can finally enjoy the fruits of their labor. But it seems fate has something different in store for Dwight, as later that night, while he's in bed with Margaret, several armed men in tactical gear storm their room. Hooded and restrained, Dwight's transported to a foreboding facility where a shadowy figure utters the ominous words, "You work for us now."
Who are you?
You work for us now.
And that's where we leave Tulsa King Season 2, with Dwight's fate a mystery as we await Season 3. I can't help feel but Bill might have something to do with this kidnapping, but only time will tell. Of course, we'll have a recap ready for you when the new season releases. So in the meantime, what did you guys think of Tulsa King Season 2? Let us know in the comments below, as I'm always interested in hearing your guys' thoughts. Thanks again for watching this recap and for sticking around until the end. If you like this video and you want to see more content on your favorite television, movies, and more, consider subscribing to the channel, and don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new video. You can also support us further via YouTube memberships, Patreon, or Buy Me a Coffee, and unlock early access to new videos and more. We'll be back soon with another video, but for now, BingeBot is logging off.